Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing Swing Time. So Swing Time came out in 1936 and was directed by George Stevens, and it stars Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. In this film, Fred Astaire plays a dancer and gambler called John Garnett, and he's set to marry a woman called Margaret. He ends up being late for the wedding, and then Margaret's father doesn't want them to get married. So what John has to do, he has to set out and prove that he can get $25,000. So he goes out with his friend and he tries to get the money. So they set off to New York City, and he comes across Penny, who's played by Ginger Rogers, and Penny is a dance instructor. And, well, as you can probably guess, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, romance blossoms, and things happen from then on. And this is where the story goes. So, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, if you haven't heard of them, then where have you been all your life? Because they are a very iconic duo. They were in 10 different films together, 9 of them made by RKO. And it's debatable whether this film or Top Hat is supposed to be the best film which features both of them. So in each of these films, they're normally a dancing duo and they have excellent chemistry on screen. And you can certainly tell that just from watching this film, that these two have done lots of films together. I believe that this was the 6th film that they had done together. And, well, this is actually the only Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers film that I've seen so far. And I have to say, they're an excellent pair. There's so many brilliant dance scenes in this film, and we get so many brilliant musical numbers. And although this is actually a romance story, it's about the romance between these two characters, really the story itself is not that necessarily that interesting. Really what is interesting are these terrific dance numbers that we have going on, and then the story sort of revolves around that and works into quite a traditional love story, which is nice enough but not amazing. We do also get a good supporting cast in this film. We get Victor Moore plays Pop, who is essentially John's friend, and he's always travelling with him towards New York City and helping him out. And Pop is a really funny character. It's quite unusual. He always has really funny lines of dialogue throughout this film and is essentially perhaps not particularly helpful, but he's a very likeable character who's always making silly mistakes and generally just adds a bit more comedy to this film and just makes it more entertaining to watch. We also get Helen Broderick as Mabel, who essentially originally works with Penny, but then later on becomes a bit of a love interest for Pop. So they also have some very funny scenes together. And Mabel's also quite an interesting character because she has some sort of sarcastic scenes in this film, and she just makes a very good contrast to Penny when we see Penny and John as a pair, and then Mabel and Pop as a pair. It just makes the film more interesting to have these two couples as we follow them throughout the story. So out of all the musical numbers in this film, I think the best one is actually right near the start of the film. In fact, it actually takes about 30 minutes into the film before we actually see a musical number. So it does take quite a while. But there's a song that they dance to called Pick Yourself Up. And it's a very catchy tune, I have to say, and you often hear the instrumental bit in the background for quite a bit afterwards. And it did get stuck in my head quite a bit afterwards, to be honest. It was a very excellent scene, and the whole dancing routine is absolutely fantastic. There's also a fantastic song called Never Gonna Dance, which they dance to as well. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, obviously, I'm talking about. If ever I'm talking about characters dancing in this film, it's obviously Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers characters. And there is another brilliant sequence where Fred Astaire's character John, he is on the piano and is singing The Way You Look Tonight, which is obviously now a fairly famous song, but it was actually a song which was originally from this film. And the song The Way You Look Tonight has been covered by many artists. Probably the most famous version is by Frank Sinatra, but it's just amazing to think that it was originally featured in this film. And that scene is a very touching scene in the film, a very important one. There is also quite a memorable scene in this film where Fred Astaire, he dances to a musical number called Jangles of Harlem, and Jangles was the nickname for a black man called Bill Robinson, who was quite famous in the 1930s for being in lots of Shirley Temple films and doing some dance routines in those sort of films. And the number for Jangles of Harlem in this film is when Fred Astaire is in blackface and doing this routine. And although I know blackface is often seen as quite offensive now, in this film it was seen as a tribute to Bill Robinson, who was a very good dancer. And the routine is actually one of the biggest production numbers that is in this film, and probably certainly one of the most memorable. It's a really elaborate sequence, and we get these 3 shadows which are on the back of the wall, and Fred Astaire is dancing along to it, trying to keep up. And it's a really energetic sequence, if a little bit over the top, but it just is one of the more entertaining musical numbers in the film, particularly compared to some of the earlier ones. Now, in terms of what maybe I didn't like so much about this film, well, I suppose the story itself perhaps is a little bit boring. I mean, the characters themselves might not be that interesting from a storytelling point of view. Really, this film is all about the dancing, it's all about the music, and Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, you can tell from this film, they're both amazing at dancing. I suppose Ginger Rogers in particular is very good, although Fred Astaire does get a bit more screen time. When they're both on screen together, it really is something special to watch. And I've seen a film with Gene Kelly dancing, Singing in the Rain, and that was very good. But Fred Astaire is a very different style to Gene Kelly. Fred Astaire just seems a bit more human when he's dancing, because he doesn't seem as much of a perfectionist as Gene Kelly. There's a certain humour that Fred Astaire has in his dancing, and perhaps a little bit more character, and it's just very interesting to watch on screen. So all in all, I had to say Swing Time is an entertaining film, very light-hearted film, very enjoyable. It depends how you're going to view it. If you go into this film hoping for an interesting story and really compelling characters, well, you might be a bit disappointed. But if you go into this film expecting a fantastic musical with lots of excellent dance sequences and some fantastic songs, then you're in for a treat, because this is exactly what that film is. And I have to say, I was quite surprised that George Stevens directed this, because I've seen another film directed by George Stevens, which is Shane, and that's a western, and possibly my favourite western of all time. So it does show that he was obviously quite a diverse director in his filmmaking, that he could do this, a musical, and then do a western. That to me is pretty impressive anyway. So I'm going to give Swing Time a rating of 8 out of 10. So there we go. So that is Swing Time. So what do you guys think? Have you seen Swing Time? Would you like to see it? Please let me know down in the comments. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.